everyone. Welcome back to the Earthbound Survival Guide, a podcast for novices and masters alike, like you, like me, like Josh. We all aspire to be more like Josh. I am Dan, and of course, here's Josh.
Hi, everybody.
And on today's podcast...
Thank you for joining us.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us for another week of insanity. We promise not to go on quite as long as we did
last week. No, of course not, because
Actually,
today...
I can't promise that.
We can try, though. I'm going to try not to make Josh spit any water here while he gets a drink. Because today, we're going to talk about all things dazzle and swashbucklerish, because we're going to talk about Swordmasters. I know people are going to say it's about time, and I know those aren't real words, but I don't really care. It's late, and I got to keep Josh
laughing at the face that I'm making.
I got to keep Josh laughing this late at night.
I'm making.
Yeah. But so pretty much that's it. We answered a bunch of emails last time around. If you have any questions for us or anything we're going to talk about here tonight, if we missed something we're going to talk about for Swordmasters, because I think we've had a couple of people ask about Swordmasters recently. Email
Just last week.
Yes.
He says with air quotes around.
Air quotes.
As we discussed last week, how we were going to be discussing anyway.
Swordmasters this week. So please feel free to email us at edsgpodcast@gmail.com. All 10% of you that are still listening at this point, yes, by all means. We can actually track when people are listening to the episodes when they drop off. So the funny thing is about we have, I think, 85% retention until the last 2 minutes. So nobody hears us get to say goodbye. So every time we say a different goodbye, like I do, quarter of you don't even pay attention.
It's fine. They get the bulk of it.
It's okay.
I think actually it is very, to talk about metrics for a moment, we are actually not that concerned with metrics, but we like looking at them.
No.
We actually have, of our listenership, we have a very significant percentage of them basically stay through the whole episode.
Yeah,
which is great.
5% or so. And I love that. I really do. Honestly. I just look at it to see what were we talking about here. We had 100% retention. I don't even have a clue. So every once in a while I look at them and go, what kept him listening then? So anyway, but today it is Swordmasters. And as I said, we've had a lot of inquiries about Swordmasters recently. High circle, low circle, doesn't really matter. Apparently, people play Swordmasters a lot. I actually I've never played a Swordmaster.
Swordmasters are great. I say that about every discipline, but I feel like I have to, it is true of every discipline.
Well, we originally said that we would have to cut this episode in half because we have so many pop culture references for Swordmasters.
Sometimes we struggle to find pop culture references for
not this one.
Some disciplines.
Warriors
not this easy. One.
Beastmaster was obvious. And thieves were pretty cool. But this one, I mean, I'm going to just label off the first 5 I can think of. The Three Musketeers. Zorro.
Well, there's 3 right there.
Exactly. Highlander. Any samurai movie you've ever seen. The Dread Pirate Roberts. The Jedi.
Inigo Montoya.
Swordmasters all.
I don't know that I would put the Jedi as Swordmasters.
Well, they got to learn some of it.
Right, but so, and this is what we'll get into in this discussion.
Exactly.
Is that a big part of the Swordmaster is presentation.
And flash. So yes.
A big part of the Swordmaster is
So, okay, I'll take the Jedi's skill, but not their show, because they don't show.
That's right. Because the Jedi are not, the Jedi, honestly, if I had to, put a discipline on the Jedi, the Jedi would be warriors.
Fair.
Because there is a very, there's more complex than that, but if you're talking about the Jedi as the iconic, lightsaber wielding, they have a very warrior.
There's a nobility to that.
They are a monastic order.
Yes.
The warriors are divide them up into, they have their philosophy and their approach toward violence is very warrior-like.
Yes.
So, the Swordmaster is the Jedi are not, for the most part, Swordmasters. They are masters
of the
sword, which is to say the lightsaber, but they are not Swordmasters.
Fair. So, now that we've made that distinction, just so we can split hairs, this is your classic Errol Flynn movie character.
Yes. Swashbuckler. Errol Flynn's Robin Hood
yes.
is a Swordmaster.
Yes. Kevin Costner's is an archer, but there's a difference.
Kevin Costner's is not a Swordmaster. It's a
fine line.
Perfectly fine movie.
Absolutely.
But Errol Flynn's Robin Hood is a Swordmaster. The Swordmaster draws very heavily on the pulp theme, like pulp adventure, pulp fiction, not Quentin Tarantino's movie Pulp Fiction, but like the
Dime store
the
novel,
pulps,
pulp
the swashbucklings, the dime store novels, the Three Musketeers, like stuff in that kind of tradition where the skill with the blade is equally balanced by skill with words. Cyrano de Bergerac, to take a deep cut, he is very sword mastery.
Yes.
Inigo Montoya I mentioned earlier.
Inigo Montoya.
But yeah, no, like Swordmasters, you cannot swing a dead cat in pop culture without running into Swordmasters.
Without finding one. Yes. Yes. Even the 13th Warrior, I think, was more Swordmaster than Warrior, but that's just me. So, another deep cut. Anyway, so yeah, oodles of references for Swordmasters. But my favorite part, as I was talking to Josh right before we hit the record button on this episode, is the description listing in the 4th edition actually uses the word panache. Because they demonstrate quickness, flash, and panache in a fight.
Yeah, it's a great word. Yeah, like the point of the Swordmaster, as we kind of alluded to here, is style. Like, they are good with a weapon. Like, that is part of their thing. Yeah. But their philosophy, whereas the warrior, who we've talked about before, is more about being very, very good, and the idea is to win the battle, is to win the war, is to, like, is to defeat whatever
the opponent. Period.
Basically like the Sun Tzu rules of war, like the objective, like you have the objective and you achieve the objective. The Swordmaster is the warrior doesn't like killing, but recognizes it as something that is sometimes necessary and approaches it with the gravity that they feel that deserves. The Swordmaster is, dying's ugly. Let's, it's like they don't necessarily like to kill, but it's an ugly task that is sometimes necessary. So let's pretty it up. Like not in
put on a show.
Yeah, like not in the let's see how creative I can get with the spatter patterns, But it's more like, no. It's a show, it's a performance, I'm
going to defeat you, and I'm going to show exactly how badly you're going to lose.
That it is, it's about style. It's about, to quote Megamind, presentation. The difference between a warrior and a swordmaster is presentation.
The quote I lean on with the word panache, it goes back to the movie In the Line of Fire with John Malkovich and Clint Eastwood, where they're talking about the assassins, and they're comparing John Wilkes Booth to Lee Harvey Oswald. And they say Booth had panache because he said a phrase and jumped off of the balcony, making a show of things, versus Oswald did not. Anyway, that's where I get the word panache from. That's my reference to go with. There you are. So, yes, Swordmasters have panache and style and a presence and a show to put on and some words to say along with it, because they're here, as I said, I'm not only going to defeat you, I'm going to embarrass you while I defeat you.
And in fact, killing you prevents you from telling other people how badly I embarrassed you.
Exactly. That's just the proof of the pudding. So, of course, their important attributes are naturally, and this is only just because it's alphabetical, charisma. And dexterity.
Charisma and dexterity.
And charisma is so not a dump stat for a swordmaster.
Yeah, for reasons that we'll get into when we start discussing the different talents that they have. But again, it's the presentation, it's the social aspect, and not social in the sense that a troubadour is, but social in the sense of giving a performance, of being engaging and charming, and that they refer to combat as the dance. Like, there is a very artistic approach to it. And again, like dressing up, like putting finery on an ugly job.
I literally just watched the movie First Night this past weekend, and Lancelot is kind of a sellsword. He makes his living with his sword, and he is flashy, and he is talking all the way through it, and he is very good at what he does, and he disarms people a lot. Makes his living by being better in sword combat than anybody else. So, another example right there from pop culture if you happen to see the movie. So, anyway, the karma ritual of course, is they fence an imaginary opponent. And again, the commercials haven't changed much since first edition at all. But they provide their own sound effects and perform acrobatic moves and engage in swashbuckling dialogue to, again, rehearse the dance or the show for whatever it's going to be. So it's half about the moves and half about the act and another half about the words. So it's 3 halves.
Well, yes. Absolutely.
My math works.
I think that is actually a very appropriate thing when it comes to a Swordmaster, because Swordmasters don't do anything by halves.
No, but they do not. They give you a 1.5. But of course, their artisan skills, naturally, just as suggestions, of course, are acting and dancing, again, to just make more of a show of everything.
To go with the performance end of things.
Yeah. And the half magic ability is the care of their weapons, knowledge, the history of legendary weapons, recognizing different types of melee weapons. They also use half magic to identify another Swordmaster's fighting techniques, including which prominent Swordmasters may have shaped the style of that person.
Yeah.
So
it's not something that is actually really explored a whole lot in the setting material, but there are like sort of schools of Swordmasters, like different like fighting styles, different schools of training, and a prominent master would have their students that kind of pass along their traditions. Another place to actually take some inspiration for Swordmasters, especially in that regard, is to look at the dueling manuals from the Renaissance and like late Middle Ages and things along those lines, where a lot of like the styles and forms and whatnot were codified. The duel between Inigo Montoya and the Man in Black in Princess Bride, where they are like, as they're opening up and sort of sizing each other up, they're like, oh, well, you are using this style, and well, clearly you knew that would be a good counter. Like that is something that is like that patter, that discussion as they are fighting. Like that is like, if nothing else, if you have not seen the duel between them in The Princess Bride, my God, you are missing out. Go track it down. I mean, there are a shortage of perfect movies in the world.
Thank you, Carrie, always.
But that scene is up there with the duel between, again, to go back to Errol Flynn's Robin Hood, between Robin Hood and I think it's the Sheriff of Nottingham in Errol Flynn's Robin Hood.
Yes.
That is an incredibly iconic fight scene. Like, I mean, if you're looking for like Swordmaster inspiration, a lot of those things are there. So yeah, but I think that one of the things you can do if you've got a Swordmaster in your group is maybe work with them on who their master was. Like, especially if they come from a more populated area, was there a rival school that they were, to go almost like Montague and Capulet, kind of like, were there rivalries? Look to, although there's less like physical melee, like blade work type combat, you can kind of take a little bit of inspiration from Hong Kong action films, like kung fu movies, where you have the different schools of different styles of kung fu and the rivalries that can go up there. Jackie Chan is a Swordmaster, despite the fact that he doesn't really use a weapon. He is a Swordmaster.
Yes,
because it's all about the performance.
With whatever
it's like the presentation. Bruce Lee was a warrior. Jackie Chan is a Swordmaster.
And so the question always in my group is if the two of them had a fight, who would win? And our definition is the room empty? Because the room is empty.
I mean,
Bruce Lee's going to win.
There is some. I mean, clearly there is some showmanship, some presentation and flair for Bruce Lee, obviously. But there is again, you kind of like summarizing like the differences. So how, like we talked about last episode, like trolls and orcs, like there are some things that are so very similar between them, but fundamentally are very different. Jackie Chan and Bruce Lee, both of whom are incredibly skilled martial artists, but the way they approach it and the underlying philosophy of that is so different that even though in some respects the results are the same, they are also very different.
Yes. There's some overlap, but there's a clear distinction. So yes. Agreed. So let's get on to the talents.
One last thing actually before we get to talents, because you didn't mention this. Well, durability, yes, but Swordmasters, while they are called Swordmasters...
Oh, right. I was going to bring this up.
They are not limited to fighting with swords. It is the most common weapon that they that Swordmasters use.
Yes.
But Swordmasters can fight equally well with any weapon. Typically, they will have a chosen weapon that they use.
Yes.
You know,
For instance,
but swords, generally
Kagorsi's
speaking,
two-handed axe, only because I've read that
two-handed
email
axe
3 or 4 times. But otherwise, so they can do two single-handed weapons. So if they wanted to do like 2 sticks, like eskrima sticks,
like Daredevil's billy clubs, eskrima clubs.
Yeah, so you can do those as well, or 2-hand hatchets. Take your or 2 dwarf swords. Take your pick. So
yeah, I've seen like in early days people who had like worked up. Oh well, my character doesn't use swords; he uses axes. So I'm going to make an axe master discipline. Just make a swordmaster and have him use axes.
Yeah,
like you don't need to.
It's a whole lot easier.
Anyway,
it's a whole easier. Yeah. Yes, don't have to be limited to a sword. Understood. But they get the durability of 7.
Yes, they are a combat discipline.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're about the show and the dance as much as anyone, but they are a combat, like, that is their thing.
This is their bread and butter.
Fighting stuff. Is trying to introduce 3 feet of tempered steel into the guts of their opponent.
The pointy end goes into the other men. Yes.
That's right.
And all that.
You hold the blunt end and you stick them with the pointy end.
Exactly. So, discipline talents in the first circle are going to be incredibly rudimentary, and these are the building blocks for everything that the Swordmaster is going to do from here on out. So, clearly, avoid blow.
Avoid blow. Yeah, you're going to be in combat. You want the ability to not get hit. And avoid blow reflects not just dodging, but parrying as well. Mm-hmm. There was a version of the Swordmaster that was created in 2nd edition,
based upon parry,
and that introduced parry as a talent.
Yep.
And 3rd edition kept it as well. I don't think that division is necessary. I think avoid blow is perfectly fine to narrate as any way that you are preventing an attack from successfully landing.
Agreed.
Whether that is using your sword to parry it, whether if you happen to be using a shield to deflect with your shield, or even just simply dodging out of the way.
Exactly.
So any of those are perfectly applicable. You don't need to dilute the talent pool by, basically having individual skills or talents for every little thing that you might do.
Yes.
But avoid blow, absolutely, key. Especially as we start seeing with some of their later stuff, they don't get some of the endurance tools that warriors get. And so while the warrior can rely a little bit more on toughness and strength to get by, Swordmasters really rely on the dexterity a lot more.
Yes. And
raising that avoid blow and raising that defense as high as possible and imposing penalties on their targets through use of a talent we'll mention shortly. Yes. In order to make it easier for them to not get hit in the first place. They've got a durability 7, so they can take punishment, but they don't get, generally speaking, they don't get stuff like wood skin. They don't get a lot of those kind of things.
Yeah.
They are much more of the agility speed style of combat, as opposed to the strength and endurance style.
Yeah, they're not here to...
avoid blow, very important. Discipline talent, obviously,
clearly
first on the list.
Yes.
A Swordmaster without avoid blow is in trouble.
True. Leading us to, I'm going to skip over one real quick, melee weapons, because of course you have to.
Obviously.
Yeah. Big duh. So then we'll go back to the other ones, which are maneuver, which is sorely underrated as a talent, I always feel.
Yeah, maneuver has seen a little bit of change from various editions. Original version of maneuver, basically you would sacrifice your attack 1 round in order to potentially get a bonus to your attack the subsequent round. The idea was originally that you would roll maneuver, and that would set your physical defense for the round.
Yeah.
And if you did not get hit at all during that round, then you would get a bonus to your attack. Couple of drawbacks there is that
there's a lot of if coming off that plan.
There's some if that's coming off there, but also that the amount of bonus that you would get from your maneuver was not really worth sacrificing an action in order to get. Right? Basically, if you calculate odds and stuff like that, you can sort of figure out what your average damage per round would be.
Yeah.
Okay? You can crunch those numbers and figure out based against a certain physical defense, what your damage per round, certain defense and armor ratings, what your damage per round would be. And sacrificing your action for a round lowers your average damage per round, your DPS, for lack of a
better
term, in order for maneuver to be worthwhile mechanically, it should provide approximately that same kind of benefit, so that you are maybe hitting only every other round, but hitting for about the same amount that you would with 2 standard actions. Now, there is an argument to be made that numerical equivalence and superiority or whatever is not the be-all and end-all, and that going with maneuver as a style thing, even if it is perhaps less mechanically advantageous, is still something that stylistically is really appropriate for the Swordmaster.
I would agree with that.
That is a valid take. Anyway, the original version of maneuver is available now as a knack. If people really like the old style, we sort of brought it back. But basically the idea is with maneuver, it provides you a bonus to your physical defense rather than just replacing it. It just provides a bonus. And it also provides a bonus to damage.
Both good.
But it's a simple action, so it can be done in conjunction with your regular attack every round. And so it costs some strain. It provides maybe a little bit of a bonus. It does actually sort of increase potentially your defensiveness and your damage output.
And it keeps it simple.
And so, yeah.
Love maneuver. Always underrated. Moving on to, as we said earlier, Taunt.
Taunt. Yes, this is
not, regardless of mechanics, this is a style
probably
choice.
One of the
you have to have
this is one of the probably one of the definitive Swordmaster talents. There's another one that they get later. We'll talk about that one. But Taunt is really like Swordmaster. This is basically I
will taunt you a second time.
I will say some things about you and distract you or enrage you or make you upset in some manner that provides you penalties to your to tests that you might want to do. Basically, so I maneuver and boost my physical defense and taunt you and reduce your attack steps, making it even harder for you to hit me in the first place. And basically playing into that like style of Swordmaster is best to not get hit. In the first place.
So, gotta have.
But this is one that can certainly bring a certain amount of role playing and improv and thinking on your feet on to how you can portray your character and their style as a result of that.
A lot of flair in this one.
Yes.
And then, of course, because everyone gets it at first circle, thread weaving. Yeah, gotta have that. So there is absolutely no argument to be made about replacing anything at first circle. Those are absolutely the bare bones foundation of your Swordmaster. Second circle, they get +1 to their social defense.
Yes. I'm going to mention this now. It'll kind of become clear when we get through the progression. Most disciplines get, over the first 8 circles, they'll get +3 to 1 defense and to their what is considered their primary defense, and +1 to a secondary defense. So for a total of +4.
Yeah.
Swordmasters end up with +2 and +2.
Yeah.
So they get +2 social, +2 physical, because they are such so balanced, and that is like an intentional thing.
Of course.
Whereas everybody else will have, like a warrior will have +3 physical defense and +1 mystic, I think is their other one.
Something like that.
Most magicians will get +3 to their mystic defense and +1 to a secondary.
Yeah.
Swordmasters do +2/+2.
And,
They get that. So
that's on purpose.
But yeah, they start with the social defense, and they basically sort of alternate.
No, I love the design of it, and I know it was intentional on purpose to balance that out. And I like the fact that they are unique in that, because they're equally social as far as in physical. So their second circle discipline talent is First Impression.
We've talked about this with a bunch of other disciplines.
Yeah.
First Impression as the social side of the Swordmaster, they did not really get. Taunt is kind of social, but First Impression is the real social talent, first social talent that they pick up. And like that plays right into their presentation. Like, I have arrived. I am here. Aren't I amazing? Don't you love me? Aren't you impressed?
The David Lee Roth thing. I got you. Okay. Sorry, pop culture reference. Third circle, they get the karma point spent on interaction tests. Again, tending toward their social aspect.
Yep, leaning into a little bit of their social aspect.
But their discipline talent, I think, is what you're referring to, Riposte.
Riposte, yes. This is basically the Swordmasters
turning the attack on the attacker.
Turning the attack on the opponent. It can only be done against actual melee weapon attacks.
Mm-hmm.
Without a knack, you can't riposte unarmed attacks like claws or Beastmaster or anything like that. There is a knack available that allows you to do that. But it is the Swordmasters, whereas the warrior, for example, with Air Dance gets their potential extra attack from that.
Yeah.
The Swordmaster's potential extra attack is in Riposte. It is a defensive talent in that you roll it to potentially avoid. So it adds another layer of defense in there with Avoid Blow.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, once per round, you can use it to strike back at an opponent with your weapon. If your Riposte roll is high enough to beat their physical defense, not only, and you avoided their blow, and you beat their physical defense, you hit them back, and you basically get another attack on them as a response to them attacking you. Very nice.
Riposte
very popular.
Is badass.
limited to one strike back per round, only because allowing more than that is broken.
Fair. So avoid blow
because of...
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to... Only because there's nothing else at Novice tier that allows that degree of multiple attack ability.
Fair. Is that a word? Attackability?
Well, yeah. The ability to make multiple attacks. Air Dance allows you potentially one extra attack.
Fair. So
stuff like that.
Avoid blow is a free action, and Riposte is a free action. Just because people are going to want to ask, can they try Avoid blow and then Riposte if the Avoid blow fails in the same round?
No, I don't think so. I think you have to choose one or the other.
Just want to make that clear since we're on third circle.
I'm not sure. An adept may not use Riposte and another talent that negates being hit, such as Avoid blow, against the same attack.
Okay.
165 under the last bit under Riposte in the player's guide.
Good. I hadn't checked that one. Okay.
Pretty sure.
The caveat was in there. I wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Fair. Okay. I have the book in front of me. I could have easily flipped over there as well. No big deal.
I had it. I just needed to flip to the right page.
Fair. Fourth circle. They, of course, as you said, get the +1 to their physical defense. Again, balancing out the social defense.
Yep.
And they get a discipline talent of Heartening Laugh.
Yep. This is one that allows the Swordmaster to boost the defenses of their allies and themselves against fear-causing effects, whether that is from a horror or battle shout or anything that causes a fear or intimidation effect. And it basically allows them to increase their defenses and I think give them a bonus to shake it off as well.
Yeah, I just love that. Second circle was a social talent, first impression. Third circle was a combat talent, Riposte. And fourth circle is Heartening Laugh, which is social.
Is sort of social.
Yeah, sort of social. So let's get to the options since we're at fourth circle now. The novice talent options are in alphabetical order. Acrobatic defense, which I have always loved. It's where you
this is
one.
Defense. Yep, this is one that, as opposed to maneuver, which provides you a bonus to physical defense and to attack, acrobatic defense is purely defensive.
Yes,
it's not a discipline talent because there's not really any place to put it. We've already got maneuver, which fulfills a similar role.
Maneuver is
what you
core.
start looking at when you are talking about the Swordmaster and the options is sort of three branches, sort of two major branches, but sort of three development paths that you can follow.
Mm-hmm.
You can follow what's called the Bladesman, basically, which is where you take combat-focused talents, that you have some social stuff, but your primary focus is on being really, really good with your weapon.
Yes.
And so with that, you would pick up anything that is more like actual combat-focused. There's the Gallant, which is sort of the flip side of that, is basically going to be picking up all sorts of social stuff. That, they can fight with a sword, they're pretty decent at it, but their primary thing is
the show.
The show, wooing the ladies, impressing the locals, like all of that stuff. Okay. And then, of course, the third path is kind of striking a balance between them, sort of the more traditional Swordmaster. The Bladesman and Gallant in first edition were specialties that had some slight differences between a couple of talent choices and how their defenses were allocated. Those are basically now, based on the options that you pick, kind of defines which approach you're going to take. So acrobatic defense would be one that would be suited to a more Bladesman style, because there's another defensive thing. Like if you are going to be fighting opponents that are unarmed, where or something like that. Acrobatic defense is also more useful against groups, whereas maneuver is more focused on a single opponent. Mm-hmm. So that's another reason to consider that.
Absolutely. Anticipate blow.
Another sort of more combat talent, another defensive type talent. Mm-hmm. This is one that is, whereas acrobatic defense is more of a boost your defense based against your opponent's physical defense, because that's the target number for it. Mm-hmm. Anticipate blow is based on mystic defense. It's perception based.
Yes.
So those are two different paths of how you can be a more defensive combatant.
Yeah.
The downside of anticipate blow, obviously, is that you need to be acting fast enough. You need to have a little bit of a higher perception. You need to be acting before the opponent that you're going to be anticipating.
Hence dexterity.
So its use, so its use is potentially somewhat limited.
It depends upon how squishy your character is.
It depends on how you built your character in the first place. If you are going to be going for more of a gallant style, mm-hmm. You might want to maybe look at the and maybe boosting your perception a little bit as well, and having a higher perception to start off, even though it's not really a Swordmaster important attribute.
Yeah.
In order to look at the anticipate blow, because that is, more reading your opponent and a little bit more thematically social combat, if you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I do. The readers can write in if they don't. Or the listeners can write in. Danger sense.
Yep. Because of danger sense's relationship to ambushes and being able to react appropriately when caught by surprise, that is, it's in there as a potential situation. Swordmasters in earlier editions had trap initiative, which is what kind of morphed into danger sense.
Fair.
And so that's in there sort of also as a traditional, like, this is something that they have had. It is available for people who want to, say, rebuild or come as close as they can to rebuilding a classic Swordmaster.
Yeah.
In terms of what's available.
And just, I think thematically, it's one of those, the Swordmaster is usually not caught off guard. And so I think danger sense would play into that.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. Distract.
Yep. Takes a very similar thematic approach or effective approach to Taunt. Mm-hmm. The downside of Distract is that it actually penalizes your defenses. It also provides a penalty to your opponent, though not against you.
Yes.
So it's not as well suited to the Swordmaster style of play, but it is somewhat social in that respect. But it's really good if because it makes the opponent focus on you. If you're in a group where your Swordmaster is one of the main sort of fighter types, mm-hmm. because it provides a bonus. It penalizes the opponent's defenses, essentially providing a bonus to your allies that might be attacking them.
Fair. And then impressive display, which of course is right up the Swordmaster's alley.
Yeah, this is like the archers get this, for example. One or two, I think troubadours get it as well. This is basically the idea of you can use another ability as an interaction test, essentially. Yes. Mm-hmm. Like, this is the Swordmaster's ability to cut the buttons off of their opponent's jacket.
Yes.
This is the ability to cut the, Zorro carving the Z in the clothing of the guard without actually injuring him. This mm-hmm. is basically where you use your skill with your weapon or something else to basically intimidate or impress or otherwise socially interact with your target.
Totally. Speak language. Because, of course, if you're going to impress people, it might not hurt to speak a second language in case they don't speak your first one.
Or a third, or a fourth.
Or third or fourth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the restrictions on Taunt is that the target needs to be able to understand what you're saying.
Yes.
And so having speak language potentially in order to, especially if you might be traveling to areas where people might not speak Dwarven, mm-hmm. Might not speak the common tongue. The ability to pick up other languages,
always good.
Well suited for the gallant type, mm-hmm. who might be a little bit more social and things like that. And
on to Tiger Spring, which I think is just an
There's your initiative booster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because occasionally the Swordmaster wants to go first.
Yeah, and you want to go first. Something that is worthwhile if you can act sooner. Then you can do things like Taunt. You can do things like Maneuver that provide you those bonuses for the remainder of your turn. Mm-hmm. And so being able to act sooner can be worthwhile, but it's if you're going with a high dex, low armor situation for your character in the first place, it might not be something that is quite so necessary.
Fair. Unarmed combat, because occasionally you might get disarmed and need to fight your way back to your sword.
Primarily in this list because of Tiskrang.
Yes, tail attack. Because Tiskrang Swordmaster is like the epitome.
Because Tiskrang Swordmaster is a thing. Unarmed combat is in there in large part because of Tiskrang, so that they can more effectively use their tails.
Yes.
Because the Tail Dancer, which is the Tiskrang specific path, which is largely based off of Swordmaster.
Yeah.
Is largely intended to be a Swordmaster, though warriors are equally good at it. But having the unarmed combat to be able to use your tail effectively, that's part of the reason why. And sometimes, you are caught without your weapon and you still might want to be able to fight.
Yes, because you get to use karma on that. Winning Smile. Again.
Winning Smile. Right there's your social talent. Again, very, very gallant appropriate, very Swordmaster appropriate.
It's not a discipline
Nothing
talent.
much. We've just...
But it's so like written for the Swordmaster alone.
Well, again, we're looking at a situation where it's like, we've only got so many discipline slots.
Yep.
There are a bunch of talents that are appropriate. We've got to decide which ones go and which ones stay.
Yeah.
First impression is generally more useful than Winning Smile.
First impression is
first
one,
impression gets
Winning
the talent
Smile
slot.
is 1A.
Yeah. Or something to that effect.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's like first impression is an A, Winning Smile's the A-.
Yes.
Like, they're both really good.
One's better.
But you will probably, in general, get more use out of first impression.
Totally. And then Wound Balance, because, again, it helps not to get knocked down in Earth Dawn.
Yeah, if you do get hit, that's not great. If you do, suffer a wound, then you want to try and keep your feet if you can, because getting knocked down is bad news.
Entirely. Okay, on to Fifth Circle, because lots of things happen to other disciplines at Fifth Circle. Swordmasters are no different. They, of course, get a karma on... They can spend karma on damage now with a melee weapon, which is always good. But they get this new ability called Size Up.
Yep, which is basically like creature analysis, but against name givers.
Yeah, takes 2 strain. You roll your thread weaving against your opponent's mystic defense, and then ask for a stat.
Yeah, basically.
So, yeah, you can size up your opponent, hence the name. So your discipline talent at this point is a second weapon.
Yep, the Swordmaster is designed around the idea that they are going to be 2-weapon fighters. They're going to be Florentine style, sword and dagger.
Yeah.
With Nax, I think, to become available later, you could go with like twin one-handed swords or something along those lines. That is the, again, apologies to Kogorsky. It is possible for a Swordmaster to focus on a single larger weapon. Their talent selection is not really geared towards it. And if that is the style, I strongly recommend you to talk to your game master about allowing you to use the all talents to advance option and pick something from the journeyman talent list that you would have there that you would advance as your Fifth Circle talent instead of second weapon. But having 2 weapons is not a bad thing.
No.
That's 2 attack rolls. That's 2 potential hits.
Yeah.
That's like, you can actually, like, I understand, again, I just said earlier in about when I was talking about maneuver.
Yes.
Raw numerical advantage is not necessarily the only reason to go with something. If you are a style where you're going to be a Swordmaster with a 2-handed sword or axe or something like that, where you're using a single bigger weapon, particularly like if you're going to be a troll Swordmaster will very frequently go with a
big honking axe,
with a big weapon, 2-handed sword or something like that.
Cave axe.
The damage output that you would get from 2 smaller weapons tends to be a little bit higher than you get with a single big weapon, especially when you start factoring forge bonuses into it. And it's easier to get 2 + 3 bonuses, 1 on each sword, than to have a single +6 bonus on a larger weapon.
Yeah.
So, from a certain standpoint, the 2-weapon style, which is kind of seen as the default for the Swordmaster, is in that regard a little bit more effective.
Yeah.
Especially where they're, and again, it's flashy, it's stylistic, it's,
it always looks
iconic.
cool in the movies.
The all of the Tiskrang Swordmaster pictures have, 2 weapon.
Yes.
Are 2 weapon style.
Absolutely. Because A, Tiskrangs are awesome, and B, 2 weapons are awesome. Moving on to 6th circle, they get, of course, the other bonus to social defense, now the total of +2, and they get disarm. Because that, again, is
if you're going to be fighting other Swordmasters who are coming at you with 2 weapons, get rid of one of them, or take both of them.
Exactly.
Or, whatever. So that can be handy. There is a perhaps slight mechanical mismatch in one regard, where riposte only works against weapons, and if you disarm your opponent's weapon, you can't riposte them anymore.
Yes.
But generally speaking, if you disarm somebody's weapon, they're not going to be trying to hit you.
9 times out of 10. Unless they're really tenacious.
That can be, yeah.
Or they're Tiskrang with a tail attack.
So yeah, having disarm, especially if you're going to be fighting against groups, making somebody take their action to go and retrieve their weapon.
Oh,
they're
totally.
not trying to hit you. Getting back into the Swordmaster's approach is to not get hit in the first place, if at all possible, as opposed to not worrying so much about getting hit and just being able to soak it.
Yeah.
If you disarm your opponent,
they can't hit you.
Then the fight if you, depending on how well you do, you might end the fight at that point if you successfully disarm them, depending on the circumstances.
Yes. So you win. And 8, sorry.
And you could potentially use disarm in conjunction with impressive display.
Yes. And really end the fight.
Anyway.
And their career socially and end their career physically. So on to 7th circle, you get a +1 to your initiative because it's about time. And then you get resist taunt because it's the ever-escalating arms race, as we've talked about before. With other Swordmasters, if you can taunt them at 1st circle, you need to be able to resist them at 7th.
Yep. I mean, perhaps ideally you'd want to get resist taunt a little bit sooner, but
other things were better.
Second weapon, second weapon. I mean, you could make arguments either way from a design standpoint to perhaps flip disarm and resist taunt, but I couldn't see resist taunt in potentially being any earlier than 6th. I think getting the second weapon is a pretty clear choice for 5th circle.
Yeah, more of a priority. I agree. So, no argument there. 8th circle, you of course get your next bonus to physical defense. Again, +2 now for each one of those. And, of course, just like the warrior, second attack at 8th circle.
Yes, this allows you to make an additional attack with your primary weapon, whatever weapon that was that you made your initial melee weapons test is, which would be your main weapon. This does mean that at 8th circle, if you are fighting 2-weapon style, you could potentially have 3 standard attacks plus your riposte.
Yeah.
You get your main melee weapons, you get your second weapon, and then you get your second attack on your melee weapon.
Yeah.
And then if they are attacking you with a weapon, you can riposte and potentially strike back. So potentially up to 4 strikes.
We call that
per round.
The whirling dervish or the food processor method.
Yeah. Well, that comes
Blender,
even later in
blades.
the progression.
Yes.
But yeah, second attack, obviously, if you're going with the single larger weapon, second attack is much more useful at that point for you, because you are getting, your additional attack there.
Yeah.
And so that's where your two-handed swords guys, your axe guy, your big axe guys, your quarterstaff guys, would all potentially be taking advantage of that.
Totally. And then onto the talent options. First one is Cobra Strike.
Yes. This is one that gives you, it's an initiative booster and gives you a bonus on your first attack in combat. So
it is the very quick, sudden, I want to put this in gunslinger terms. It's the quick draw.
It's sort of the equivalent of quick draw.
And then engaging banter, because of course you have to have a social skill in there as well, to not only taunt, but engage that other person in that verbal jousting as well as the physical jousting. So, and then on to etiquette.
Etiquette, because especially for the more social inclined swordmasters, knowing how to behave in different situations can be a particularly useful ability to have.
Yes, how to behave until it's time not to behave that way.
Not to behave. Yep.
So you can know that. Gliding stride, which we've talked about, I think, once or twice before, which is...
Yep, this is one that is not... It basically allows the character to sort of move through the air, like sort of short-term limited flight, to potentially gain some altitude and things like that, to cross short gaps or chasms.
Yeah.
You can, if you roll well enough, you can gliding stride up to the top of a wall or something along those lines. It's a movement-based talent, as opposed to air dance, which is also kind of like, but is more of an initiative booster. Gliding stride is the ability to gracefully move from point to point and,
like rooftop to
enhancing
rooftop.
that with magic so that you rooftop to rooftop, just being able to like kind of pull off some impressive maneuvers as you are engaged in the dance with your opponent.
Totally. It's where you see Swordmasters on
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Totally. On the side of a ship. They're actually dancing along the banister on the side of the ship, or on top of the tables in the saloon, whatever the case may be. And so they can glide between tables without worrying about their footing. So this is what that is. You don't have to worry about your footing with gliding stride. Graceful exit. Because again,
this is your social. I am so sorry, but I must be off.
I have defeated.
Please.
Yes. Continue without me. I don't belong here. Lasting impression. Because, of course, if you have first impression. This is an option for lasting impression.
Yeah, the novice tier talents are slanted slightly more in the combat direction. The journeyman talents, largely because of what they are slanted a little bit more towards the social. Because you get engaging banter, etiquette, graceful exit, lasting impression. All of these are a lot more socially inclined.
Yeah. You got to have them. Like I said, it's an option. It's not discipline. Lionheart.
Lionheart is the self fear booster. You have Heartening Laugh earlier. Lionheart just makes it even better. Again, it is not appropriate for a Swordmaster to show fear or to quail in the face of a challenge or an enemy. Such things are gauche and not to be tolerated.
Oh, gauche! What a lovely word. Not used enough. And then, of course, the 3 S's to round out the options. Spot Armor Flaw, which, of course, is right up the Swordmaster's alley.
Yep, that is a like precision placement damage booster, noticing, where you can hit the opponent to maximize the effect of your weapon. It's perception based, so if you are going with like the anticipate blow style, it pairs very nicely with that. So that's kind of a path you can take.
Totally. Sprint.
Sprint basically allows you to boost your movement rate, which, if I recall correctly, and I'm flipping here to check, is gliding stride limited by your move. It might be. In place of normal movement. Yeah. It can increase your movement rate, which, again, for a Swordmaster, which is based more on quickness and speed, is kind of appropriate, but absolutely not something that needs to be in the discipline, like a required take.
No, I like them both as options.
And then finally, Swift Kick.
Because it's just one more maneuver that the Swordmaster would pull out, which is clang, 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 sword, 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 sword. I'm going to leg sweep you now.
Yeah.
Leg sweep. It has to be there.
So, yeah, because the one thing that you may have noticed if you were kind of following along here with this, the Swordmaster does not get any ranged combat abilities. They don't get throwing weapons. They don't get missile weapons. No. They don't get either of those in their first 2 tiers of progression, because the Swordmaster is all about
up close and personal.
The focus on their up close and personal, the duelists, the focus on their chosen weapon. And while in theory, throwing weapon, you would have like, maybe throwing daggers or whatnot, especially where if you're looking at a 2-weapon fighter, you're not going to want to, unless you've got a bunch of daggers ready, basically, you're not going to want to throw away one of your weapons. And we've talked, or it has been mentioned, how throwing weapons is okay as a backup. Like if you're not going to go missile weapons, but you want some kind of range capability, throwing weapons. I can certainly see maybe if you want to have that capability in your Swordmaster, picking it up as a skill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to...
another of the things that gets considered when we're looking at what is an option versus a discipline talent is how easy is this, or how common would this potentially be as a skill? Etiquette, for example, is perfectly available as a skill. And so therefore there may not be a need quite so much to pick it up.
Yeah.
Obviously not everything that is an option is available as a skill, but if the choice comes to sometimes between, and this isn't just for the Swordmaster, but for any of them, if the choice is between something that is available as a skill versus something that is not, quite often the thing that is not available as a skill will get a slightly higher priority.
Yes.
Because of that, because it is possible to fill that in later, the other one to pick it up as a skill if you want.
Fair.
So there we go. That's the progression for Swordmasters.
So what are your thoughts on a Swordmaster using a shield in the opposite arm until they pick up?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. If you are not going to go with a two-handed weapon early on, picking up a shield as a Swordmaster, at least through your Novice tier, when you don't have second weapon, it boosts your physical defense.
Yeah.
You aren't able to take advantage of it the way that a warrior is with Shield Bash or Shield Slam or whatever it's called, and
Shield
like
Bash.
Waterfall Slam.
Yeah, Waterfall Slam.
And take advantage of that. Well, there's a talent called Shield Bash or Shield Charge is the knack. So, whatever.
Yeah.
But having a shield for a Swordmaster, if you've got a one-handed weapon, boosts that physical defense a little bit more. Again, on the idea that it is, harder to, if it's harder to hit you, then you are less likely to take damage. It does potentially get in the way a little bit, of successfully using a Void Blow. If you are increasing your base physical defense, then opponents are rolling higher to hit you successfully in the first place, which means your Void Blow needs to be a little bit higher to have a chance of compensating.
Yeah.
But that's what Karma's for.
Yes. So just thought I'd throw that out there in case people had questions about shields and or Swordmasters, because
if basically in your Novice progression, and part of this will be looking at what the rest of your group composition might be, is to either go like broadsword and shield, if you're going to be going with a slightly more defensive approach, or to go with a two-handed weapon, if you can afford it, troll sword, two-handed sword, depending on your race or whatever.
Yeah.
To go with the, that you might not, and at that point maybe relying more on maneuver and avoid blow and stuff like that for your defense, and being able to just dish out more damage.
Yeah. So, all right.
But then when you get to fifth circle, if you are going to go with the two-weapon fighting style, then obviously you kind of want to ditch the shield.
Yeah, a little bit.
And maybe start looking into, if you have a choice, thread items that boost your physical defense, to kind of make up for the loss of a shield.
Yeah.
Or just in general, any kind of defensive-related stuff is worthwhile.
Fair.
Swordmasters tend to be a little bit vulnerable to spells. They tend like,
they don't get any bonuses to Mystic Defense for the first 8 circles. So
they don't get any bonuses to Mystic Defense. They tend not to put a particularly high priority on perception.
Nope.
In the first place. Especially if you're looking at a build where you're not going to be using Anticipate Blow or Spot Armor Flaw like you're going to be using other stuff.
Yeah.
And you don't have any talents based on perception.
And they don't get Steel Thought.
They don't get Steel Thought. Certainly not in the first 8 circles anyway.
Nope.
So that is the Swordmaster's weakness is stuff that targets Mystic Defense.
If you can find any thread items or armor that actually boosts your
that boosts your Mystic Defense.
Armor. Yeah, Mystic Defense, yeah.
Or Mystic
Anything
Armor.
along those
Mystic
lines,
Defense is those are definitely worth looking into.
So that's the weakness. But other than that, any final thoughts on Swordmasters?
Swordmasters are great. They can be so much fun to play.
Yeah.
Because they allow you to be fighty, but also flashy and social and talky. Like, if you are having a game, if the particular campaign style is not particularly well suited to a troubadour, then but you would otherwise want to play a troubadour, Swordmaster is probably what you would want to look at as the fallback. Swordmaster or Air Sailor. Air Sailors tend to be a little bit less. I mean, they still have sort of a social theme involved. The Swordmaster is like, if you want to be a troubadour but have some more fighty stuff, then Swordmaster is where you want to look.
Yeah. It's a definite...
Swordmasters are great. like they have a very definite hook. They're really easy to understand. Their kit tends to be a little bit, especially at earlier circles, tends to be a little bit more straightforward than the warrior. Warriors tend to have a few different options to play around with and different approaches that they can have with their things, whereas the Swordmaster tends to be a little bit more, combat-wise at least, a little bit more single focus, you know. But yeah, I mean, when you combine Taunt and, you know, stuff like that, the Swordmaster is a really, really solid discipline and is one of the iconic Earth Dawn disciplines for a reason.
And it's made for those who are slightly more comfortable with the ROLE playing and talking and interacting and taunting and coming up with words. So the more you're silver-tongued player, as far as that's concerned, they'll have less of a chance to hide behind the combat because they need to engage, socially speaking, in that realm. So just one of those things to watch out for. But yeah, they're fantastic.
Yeah, Swordmaster is my... Like, if you held a knife to my throat, Swordmaster would be my chosen combat discipline.
Fair.
Like, I can find something, like, I really like Warrior. I like kind of the tactical options and stuff that they bring to bear. I like the raw force and aggression of the Sky Raider. You know, I like the really kind of unique aspect of the Beastmaster, if we're talking about the durability 7 disciplines. Yes. You know, I find something to like for all of them, but if you had to tell me to pick just one, it would be Swordmaster.
I've never actually played one.
Sorry. I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry about that being Swordmaster. Not sorry about it at all.
I've never played one, but again, I haven't played all of them yet. But yeah, they're on my list. Getting there. Got to make one soon.
And Swordmasters are fun. Like, there is an inherent quality of fun that comes with the social aspect of the Swordmaster. In the yet-to-be-released novel by Russell Zimmerman, which will be forthcoming at some point in the future, the introduction, one of the main characters is a Swordmaster, an Orc Swordmaster, and Orc Swordmasters are awesome.
Yes, they are.
We talked about Troll Swordmasters being really good. Orc Swordmasters are phenomenal. Anyway, there's an Orc Swordmaster, and there's a scene that, like, basically she gets introduced, like, in a sort of flashback narrative. Like, oh, like, let me tell you about one of the people that we will probably meet, and tells a story about the Swordmaster to kind of introduce her as a character. And it comes back to real time, and our sort of POV's character who has just been introduced to this, her reaction is, oh, I like her. Which was exactly my reaction. Like, I read that scene with the Swordmaster, and I'm like, oh, I really like her. And the first word out of that scene is, oh, I like her. And I'm like, oh, yeah, absolutely.
This is how that novel should read, yes. It's the way it should go.
Yes. She is... that Swordmaster is actually mentioned in one of Rusty's chapters from Questers.
Oh, cool.
Knave Two Scars is the Swordmaster in question.
So, everyone will...
And she is awesome. I can't wait for people to meet her.
So everyone stop listening to this in a minute because we're done, and then go pick up Questers again and find that chapter, just to refresh your memory.
Yeah, I think she's mentioned in the Thistonius chapter.
Sounds right for an orc.
It's either Thistonius or no, because no, it's got to be the. I think it's pretty sure it's the Thistonius chapter.
That sounds right.
That sounds right. I was going to say Locos, but then I'm like, no, I remember the Locos chapter. The Locos chapter is the creepy one about the Lady of Chains. Knave is not in that chapter.
Fair. We'll talk about Questers later.
Anyway, we will talk about Questers another time. And we Rusty was finishing up some other stuff and is going to be moving on to working on the second novel. We want to have those more done before we release any of them, because we don't want to release the first one and not have
the follow-up.
Others like following up shortly. Yes. But anyway, that wraps things up on Swordmasters. That concludes this particular dance around the square.
All swashbucklingly.
If you have questions, comments, feedback, stories, anything like that you'd like to share with us, you can reach us by email, edsgpodcast@gmail.com.
I expect Kagorsi to get a hold of us, because he is, after all, an Orc Swordmaster.
He is, after all,
with a two-handed axe.
Swordmaster with a two-handed axe. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Not at all.
follow me on social media. Find me on Twitter, Facebook, Facet Games Discord, Facet Games forums. There are interviews and panels. At some point, if I can find a little bit of spare time to clean up the audio, we did a full company panel for Orichalcum, which is the Polish Earth Dawn convention that they did online this year, of course, because everything is being done online this year. And we did a company seminar where we had the entire development team online, and it was recorded, and I have the audio from that, and I just want to clean it up a little bit. But it will be appearing in the feed at some point in the future if you want to catch the audio on that. It was about an hour and a half or so. It's also, I think, available on YouTube. Somebody posted their screen capture recording of it. But that'll be coming along the pipe at some point. We've got we're looking to do Ulysses, who is our German publishing partner, but also has a branch in the US, is looking to do an online convention of their own, which is mostly going to be focused not so much on actual games, but on like seminars and so forth. We're looking at doing one or two things for that. So if you are following FASA or whatever, you will be notified of those. We are looking at potentially doing something for Gen Con Online, which is the last weekend, the very end of July, very beginning of August. That is something that is being looked at. So while we cannot meet in person, we like to
do the best we can.
Do the best we can to engage with people. And of course, as of the release of this, Empty Thrones is still going. If you have not backed that, great opportunity. If you are somehow missing other Earthdawn products, to pick those up, spread the word, share the love.
Make the algorithm do its thing.
As I was saying, make the algorithm do its thing. Like, share, subscribe, rate, review, all of that happy stuff.
And then now it's time.
And until next time,
it is time for you to go make your own legend with Panache.
With Panache. Good night, everybody.